Oliver Barker, Unit 43, Special Subject Investigation. My topic is about how the electric guitar came about and how it's evolved over time. So to begin with, the electric guitar, I think, is one of the greatest inventions ever. I mean, it's a bit biased because I play the guitar myself. You know, I've been playing it for a while and I'm very passionate about it. But you've got to think it's completely changed music. You know, where would we be without the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and Eric Clapton? Where would we be without them? So, and it's all down to this instrument. And so I was very interested in how it sort of came about. And basically, it came about from two men, Adolf Rickenbacker and George Beauchamp, and they basically created this a guitar. It was called the Frying Pan, and it was basically something called a lap steel guitar. So it's like this, which is which is sort of just a lap guitar, and you play it with a slide and you play it with a slide or like a bottleneck or a metal bar, and it was people needed an electric guitar because the acoustic guitar was too quiet in a concert hall or in a live performance. Whereas if it's amplified, it's a lot better. And the steel guitar was quite popular in Hawaiian music, and it was often the main melodic instrument. So when people couldn't hear it, they needed one. And Beauchamp himself was a very good Hawaiian guitar player, but he needed the more volume. So he decided to build an electric guitar, and obviously, to do that, he needed a pickup. And the pickup is a magnet wrapped in a coil of wire, and this creates like a magnetic field around it. And they put this invention and they plugged it into a radio and a PA system, and it worked. They built this steel pan guitar, and it sort of sparked a long line of then other guitars. So a Spanish style guitar before that would have been like your sort of classical guitar that you hear. Not quite like an acoustic you might have today, but a Spanish style classical guitar. And they were very popular beforehand. And one type that was tried with a pickup was the Gibson ES-150. ES stands for Electro Spanish. And it was used by many jazz guitarists and players. But there was a problem with it. With the pickup on the actual hollowed body of the jazz guitar, it meant it caused a background noise and it caused a hum and a lot of feedback. So due to complications with this, that's why people started moving towards solid-bodied guitars. And the first solid-body guitar ever made was called a Slingerland Songster 401. Now these came about in 1936, and they weren't very popular really. They were for the time, but they didn't last very long due to the Second World War. But then others such as it was a guitar called the Log by Les Paul, and this was basically, it was sort of like the one I just showed you. It was just a straight log of pine, but he had fitted a body around it for shape, and it changed the sound, and there was no hum, there was no feedback. Well, there may have been, but because of the pickup, but it was very, very minimum compared to what was before. So from this invention, a man called Leo Fender took it that extra step, and he created a guitar called the Fender Esquire. Now the Esquire it's basically the nowadays, well, it's very much like a Fender Telecaster, and I'll get to that in a second. So the Esquire is a Telecaster, but with only one pickup. It's only got one single coil. Now it was in 2 years later, so the Esquire came out in 1950. 2 years later, they brought out just at the end of the year, sorry, they brought out another model. This was called the Broadcaster. Now, due to naming technicalities and Gretsch, a drum manufacturer, they had a set called the Broadcaster, so they had to change it. So they came up with a Telecaster. So the Telecaster is with two pickups instead of one. So this was a huge step forward. Slimmer neck, you had a cutaway, so you'd have access to the higher frets, and and so that was the first I'd say proper electric guitar. Then Gibson came about, and in 1952 they built the Les Paul. They teamed up with the guitarist Les Paul, and you know they're both world famous guitars. They both come about, and then again Fender came straight back a couple of years later in 1954 and brought out the Stratocaster. And the Stratocaster was again so influential because it was the first guitar to ever have 3 pickups on it. So it had 3 single coil pickups. It was also the first guitar to ever have a tremolo system fitted on it. So I mean, and I personally think that these 3 guitars are the absolute foundations of modern guitars, and it's what built on that, and it's gone to nowadays. And nowadays, you know, really, there's nothing even different about them. Maybe the pickups have had a few tweaks, so there's less hum noise and this and that. But altogether, they're still they're basically the same guitars as they was 50, 60 years ago. Except for like things like nowadays on some modern guitars and high end guitars, you can get E-tune where it's electric tuning. So on the back of the headstock, you press a button, strum open notes, and it will automatically tune. But they're not a very necessity. But the sort of roots of the guitar, the electric guitar, all go back to the original Strats, the Tellys, and the Gibson Les Pauls. And so, like I said, much hasn't changed. You know, the body has changed a bit. You know, you can get access to more woods and different things like that. You know, and there's different shapes. You can get Flying V's, Firebirds. You know, Gene Simmons of Kiss has an axe of a bass. Like his bass is in the shape of an axe. So it's quite interesting. And then also guitar pickups over time. So instead of just having the single coil, you know, in 1957, Gibson brought out they brought out the P90. They did, which was fitted on some of their Les Paul models later on, and then they also brought out the humbucker. Now the humbucker was used to reduce all hum and background noise and feedback, and they all give very different sounds. So the single pickup gives a nice chimey, bright, clean tone. Very nice. P90. I'll leave P90 till last. Humbucker is very dirty, bassy, gritty sort of sound. Use that for more of your chords and your single chord for more delicate sort of stuff. And the P90 is really sort of in the middle. And then we've got the guitar amplifier. And it really started out as something very minimal, like a little power system with valves and capacitors. And it was basically from that, it was just built on. And then we've got from in the 50s, from artists such as Chuck Berry and Link Wray, they experimented with overdriving and distorting the sound, and like purposely. And then it was in the 60s when Fender built a massive amp, because prior to that, 15 watt was all that they had, 15 watt valve amps, and this would mean that the bass and the treble were quite weak, and so with increasing the power, they've brought these tones right through, and obviously as well as the volume. And nowadays, you know, there's four main types of electric guitar amplifier: valves, solid state, hybrids, and digital modeling. Valves we've already talked about. Solid states are like valves, but basically the electrical kind. So instead of valves or tubes, solid state has transistors, which creates the sound. Hybrid is a mix between the two. It has a valve preamp, and then also it uses solid state circuitry to boost the sound and the signal. And then also digital modeling, which I think is like a sampler and an amplifier mixed together. So you get all those digital effects and sounds from your favourite sort of amplifiers on them. Sorry. And so to conclude, really, the electric guitar is just such an incredible instrument, and it's such an inspiration and such a great instrument. And so it's thanks to people like Rickenbacker and Fender and Les Paul that we have these guitars. We have the guitar heroes, and I just think that that is why it's such a beautiful instrument, and it's why it's most probably one of the most important inventions of all time. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. So thank you very much. Cheers.